Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention? The crystal clear voice of Lily Peterson cut through the elegant reception hall like a knife. My stomach dropped as I watched my soon-to-be sister-in-law glide across the polished floor toward me, her white wedding dress trailing behind her like a prowling cat's tail. Her honey-brown bob caught the light of the chandeliers as she approached, making her look almost angelic. Almost. She grabbed my hand, her perfectly manicured nails digging slightly into my skin as she pulled me toward the microphone stand. The touch was gentle enough to appear loving to the guest, but firm enough to tell me I had no choice in the matter. Placing her hands on my shoulders, she leaned into the microphone, her voice dripping with false sweetness. We now have a special speech from the groom's sister, Sarah. You know, Sarah here has quite a story. She paused dramatically, her eyes scanning through the crowd. A high school dropout working as a housekeeper at this very hotel, living on site to help support her mother. Such a touching story of sacrifice. I could feel my cheeks burning as hundreds of eyes turned toward me. My brother Ethan sat at the head table, beaming proudly, completely unaware of what was about to unfold. And since we have so many distinguished guests from Asia today, Lily continued, her grip tightening on my shoulders, she'll be delivering her speech in Mandarin. My heart stopped. Mandarin? The carefully prepared English speech in my pocket suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Oh? Lily's voice carried mock surprise as she turned to face me. Did I forget to mention that part? Don't worry, this hotel gets so many Asian guests. Surely you must know some basic phrases by now. Or maybe it's too challenging for someone who didn't finish high school. The whispers started immediately, rippling through the crowd like waves. I could see the international business executives shifting uncomfortably in their seats, while others began checking their phones, already bored with what they assumed would be an awkward disaster. What's taking so long? Can she even speak Chinese? I stood frozen at the microphone, my mind racing back through the events that had led to this moment. The sacrifices, the struggles, and most importantly, the reason I was standing here today. My family. I could still picture our small living room, decorated with streamers and a hand-drawn congratulations banner I'd made for Ethan's university acceptance. The cheap party store decorations wouldn't dim the pride shining in my mother's eyes as she watched her son open his full scholarship letter. Sarah, look, Ethan had said, pulling me into a tight hug. You're next, sis. Just 2 more years and we'll be celebrating your graduation too. I smiled and nodded, but deep down, I knew my academic path would be different. While Ethan had inherited our father's brilliant mind for numbers and analysis, I'd always struggled with traditional academics. My last report card sat hidden in my desk drawer, a row of C's and D's mocking my efforts. The sharp ring of Ethan's phone had cut through our celebration. I remember how his face had changed as he listened, the color draining from his cheeks. Mom collapsed. The fluorescent lights of Metro General Hospital cast harsh shadows as Ethan and I sprinted through sterile corridors, our sneakers squeaking against the freshly waxed floors. The antiseptic smell burned my nostrils as we followed the number signs to room 415. She has to be okay, I muttered between breaths. She has to be. We found Mom sitting up in bed, her usually neat brown hair disheveled, but her warm smile intact as she spoke with the doctor. When she saw us, she waved as if we were meeting for coffee rather than in a hospital room. Sarah, you're being so dramatic. She chuckled, though I could hear the fatigue in her voice. I'm fine. Just overdid it a bit. Your mom's tougher than that. The doctor, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair, cleared her throat. Mrs. Mason, while your condition isn't critical, this collapse is your body's way of saying you need to slow down. Working 3 jobs is putting excessive strain on your system. 3 jobs. The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd known about the department store position and her weekend shifts at the diner. But 3? When had she taken on a 3rd job? Mom, I whispered, moving closer to her bed. Why didn't you tell us? She reached out and squeezed my hand. Her skin felt paper thin, and I could see the dark circles under her eyes that she'd been hiding with makeup.
It's nothing, sweetheart. Just some extra cleaning work in the evenings. The university bills are coming up for Ethan, and with your school supplies.
About that, I interrupted, straightening my shoulders. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I took a deep breath. I'm not going to high school. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the steady beeping of the heart monitor seemed to fade away.
What did you just say?
Ethan stepped forward, his voice tight with concern. I'm not going to high school, I repeated, stronger this time. I'll skip it and work instead. That way you won't have to push yourself so hard, Mom. My voice echoed off of the hospital room walls, causing a nurse passing by to glance in with concern. Mom and Ethan stared at me, their expression a mixture of shock and disbelief. Ethan was the first to recover.
If Sarah's giving up high school to work, then I'll give up college and work too.
His voice cracked with emotion as he spoke. Mom tried to sit up straighter, wincing slightly.
Both of you, stop. I want you to follow your dreams, please.
Her eyes filled with tears.
Your father would have wanted.
Mom! I cut her off gently, moving to sit on the edge of her bed. My dream is to help you. I know I can get a high school equivalency diploma later. Right now, I want to do this. Please let me. I took her hand in both of mine, noting how cold her fingers felt. You've sacrificed everything for us. Let me do this one thing for you. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken words. Outside the window, the setting sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, casting long shadows across the hospital room floor. Finally, Mom squeezed my hand.
You're just as stubborn as your father was, she whispered, a tear rolling down her cheek. Promise me you'll get that equivalency diploma.
I nodded, my own vision blurring with tears. I promise. Ethan moved to the other side of the bed, his jaw set in determination.
I'll help support the family as soon as I graduate. That's my promise.
The next few weeks passed in a blur of application forms and rejection emails. Each morning, I'd wake up early to check job listings, my laptop's glow illuminating my hopeful face in the pre-dawn darkness. By afternoon, my inbox would be filled with variations of, "We regret to inform you," and "While your application was impressive." I kept a brave face for Mom, but each rejection chipped away at my confidence. How could I help support the family if no one would give me a chance? Then came the call that would change everything. I was sitting at our small kitchen table, picking at a bowl of cereal while scrolling through more job listings on my phone, when an unknown number flashed across the screen. Hello? Is this Sarah Mason? The voice on the other end was crisp and professional. Yes, this is she, I replied, trying to sound more mature than my 17 years. This is Margaret Chen from the Palace Hotel. We received your application for our housekeeping position, and we'd like to invite you in for an interview. I nearly dropped the phone. The Palace Hotel? The same Palace Hotel where celebrities and world leaders stayed? Where rooms cost more per night than our monthly rent? Miss Mason, are you still there? Yes, I'm here. Thank you so much for the opportunity. As I hung up the phone, I literally jumped for joy, sending my half-eaten cereal flying across the kitchen. What kind of people stayed at fancy hotels? Would I get to eat good food? Living on site seemed exciting. Looking back now, I have to laugh at my naive enthusiasm. Reality was waiting to teach me some hard lessons about the difference between fantasy and real work. My first day at the Palace Hotel was like stepping into another world. The marble lobby gleamed so brightly I could see my reflection in the floor. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls from ceilings higher than our entire apartment. Even the air smelled different, a subtle mix of fresh flowers and luxury that I'd come to know as the signature scent of wealth. Maria Rodriguez, the senior housekeeper who would become my mentor, met me at the staff entrance. She was a short woman with salt and pepper hair, pulled back in a neat bun, and eyes that seemed to notice everything. First rule, she said, handing me my uniform. We're invisible unless needed. Like ninjas, see? She winked, her warm smile putting me slightly at ease. Second rule, everything must be perfect. These people, they pay for more than one night. than most make in a month. They expect perfection. I nodded eagerly, clutching my freshly pressed uniform. I won't let you down, Mrs. Rodriguez. Call me Maria, querida. Now, let's see you handle a basic room turnover. That first basic room turnover was a disaster. I walked in confident, armed with my trusty employee manual and determination. 10 minutes later, I stood in horror, staring at the king-sized bed I just made. Duh, those corners! Maria tilted her head, studying my handiwork. Have you ever made a bed before? Of course, I defended. I make my bed every morning. Ay, Dios mío! Maria shook her head. This isn't making your bed at home, Sarah. These sheets cost more than your monthly salary. Watch. She stripped the bed in one fluid motion and began remaking it. Her hands moved with practiced precision, creating perfect hospital corners and exactly equal drops on each side. The final product looked like it belonged in a magazine. Now, you try. It took me 6 attempts to get it right. By the end, my arms ached and sweat dampened my new uniform, but the smile on Maria's face made it worth it. You're a quick learner, she said. But beds are just the beginning. Wait until you learn about the pillow menu. The what menu? Oh, honey, Maria laughed. You have so much to learn. The next few weeks tested everything I thought I knew about work. I showed guests to the wrong rooms, earning cold stares and complaints. I tripped while carrying a breakfast tray, sending fresh squeezed orange juice and perfectly poached eggs crashing to the floor. Once, I even walked in on a famous actor in his bathrobe because I forgot to knock, a mistake I never made again. The worst part wasn't the mistakes themselves, but the whispers that followed. That's the dropout, I'd hear other staff members murmur. Stay away from her if you don't want trouble. Each night, I'd collapse into my small bed in the staff quarters, muscles aching, fighting back tears. The room was tiny, barely bigger than a closet, but it was mine. And more importantly, it meant I could send most of my paycheck home to Mom. On particularly rough days, I'd call home just to hear her voice.
How are you doing, sweetheart?
She'd ask. I could picture her sitting in her favorite armchair, probably still in her work uniform. I'm fine, Mom, just tired. How are you feeling?
Much better now that I'm only working one job. Your brother called today. He's doing great in his classes.
Those calls kept me going, reminding me why I was here. But I knew I needed to do more than just survive. I needed to excel. So I started staying late, practicing after my shifts ended. I'd walk the empty hallways, carrying trays of water glasses, rehearsing proper room service etiquette. Good evening, I have your breakfast order, I'd say to an imaginary guest, focusing on my posture, my tone, the angle of my arm as I presented the tray. One night, as I was practicing my silver service technique with empty plates, I heard a laugh behind me. I thought I was hearing ghosts, Maria said, leaning against the doorframe. But it's just our little ninja, training after hours. I felt my face flush. I just want to get better. Maria's expression softened. You know what? I came to this country with nothing but a suitcase and determination. Couldn't even speak English. But I learned, just like you're learning now. She straightened up. Come on, I'll show you the proper way to carry those plates. From that night on, Maria became more than just my supervisor. She became my mentor, my hotel mother. She taught me everything she knew, from the proper way to address foreign diplomats to how to remove any stain imaginable. The key to this work, she'd say, isn't just about cleaning rooms or carrying trays. It's about dignity, yours and theirs. We provide comfort, privacy, and respect. That's what luxury really means. 2 years passed at the palace, and I grew from the nervous teenager who could barely make a bed into someone the guest asked for by name. My language has improved too. Between our international guest and my diverse coworkers, I was picking up new phrases daily. Terasi, called Mr. Kim, one of our regular Korean business guests, as I delivered his morning coffee.
How is your Korean study going?
Jolayo, I replied with a smile, proud of my improving pronunciation. I watched the drama you recommended. These little interactions became my unofficial language lessons. During breaks, I'd sit in the staff room with Jin from housekeeping, watching K-pop videos on her phone while she corrected my pronunciation. May from the kitchen taught me Mandarin while we folded napkins, and Samchai from maintenance helped me practice Thai during quiet evening shifts. Then came the day that changed everything. The day Ethan invited Mom and me to celebrate his news. The restaurant he chose was exactly the kind of place where I now worked but had never eaten. Crystal glasses caught the light like diamonds, and the menu didn't list prices, always a bad sign for the budget conscious.
Ethan, Mom whispered, clutching her worn purse. This is too expensive. Let me handle it,
he insisted, pulling Mom's chair with a flourish.
I have something important to tell you both.
I watched him carefully. My brother was practically vibrating with excitement, his usual calm demeanor barely containing whatever news he was about to share.
So,
he began after the waiter had poured our water.
Remember that internship I had last summer?
At the consulting firm? I asked, trying not to stare at the tiny portion of appetizer that probably cost as much as my daily wage.
Yes, well...
He paused dramatically, reminding me of when we were kids and he tried to build suspense before revealing a magic trick.
They offered me a full-time position. Not just any position. They want me on their international team.
Mom's water glass clattered against her plate.
Ethan, that's wonderful. There's more, he continued, his grin widening. The starting salary, it's more than enough for all of us. Mom, you can finally retire. Sarah, you can go back to school if you want.
Ethan Mason, Mom's voice cracked with emotion.
I keep telling you not to worry about me. Too late, he said softly, reaching across the table to take her hand. You both sacrificed so much for me. Now it's my turn.
I felt tears welling up in my eyes. I'm so proud of you, big brother.
I'm proud of both of you,
Mom said, squeezing my hand with her free one.
Your father would be too.
We sat there for a moment, holding hands across the white tablecloth, ignoring the curious glances from other diners. Then Ethan cleared his throat.
There's, one more thing.
His cheeks flushed slightly.
I met someone at work.
Mom and I exchanged excited glances.
Her name is Lily, he continued. She works for one of our client companies. She's brilliant, beautiful.
He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit from childhood.
I really think she could be the one. Oh, honey,
Mom beamed.
When can we meet her?
Actually, Ethan straightened his tie.
I was thinking we could all have dinner next week. At the palace?
My heart skipped a beat. At my hotel?
Is that okay? I know it's where you work, but it's perfect for a first meeting. The gardens are beautiful this time of year and...
It's perfect, I interrupted. I'll make sure everything is special. As we finished our meal, I couldn't contain my excitement. A sister-in-law. I'd always wanted a sister, and now I might finally have one. Someone to share secrets with, to go shopping with, to be a real family with. If only I'd known then what I know now. The evening of the big meeting arrived, and I had never seen the palace's private dining room looking more perfect. I'd personally overseen every detail, from the fresh peonies on the table to the precise angle of each piece of silverware.
Sarah, mi amor,
Stop fussing, Maria laughed, catching me adjusting a fork for the third time. Everything está perfecta. Now, go change. Tu familia will be here soon. I rushed to my tiny room, hands shaking as I changed out of my uniform into the nicest dress I owned. It wasn't designer like the ones our guest wore, but it was clean and pressed, and Mom had helped me pick it out specially for tonight. When I returned to the private dining room, Mom and Ethan were already there. Mom looked beautiful in her blue dress, the one she saved for special occasions, and Ethan was handsome in his business suit. I was so busy watching them laugh together that I didn't notice the new arrival until I heard a soft, "Excuse me," from behind. I turned and felt my breath catch. The woman standing there looked like she stepped straight off of a magazine cover. Her honey brown hair was cut in a sleek bob that framed her face perfectly, and her designer dress probably cost more than I made in a month. But it was her bearing that really caught my attention. She carried herself with a kind of confidence that came from a lifetime of privilege. "You must be Sarah." Her voice was musical, her smile warm. "Are you nervous? Don't worry. I'm looking forward to getting to know you." I stood there gaping like a fish out of water until Ethan's voice snapped me back to reality.
"Sarah, this is Lily Peterson. Lily, my little sister, Sarah."
"It's so nice to finally meet you," I managed to squeak out. "Ethan's told us so much about you." "All good things, I hope," Lily laughed, the sound like tinkling crystal. "Stanford Business School can make anyone seem dull." The conversation flowed easily after that, or at least it seemed to. Looking back, I realized I barely spoke, too busy staring at Lily in admiration. Every gesture, every word seemed perfectly calculated to charm. She asked Mom about her hobbies, complimented Ethan's latest work project, and seemed genuinely interested in everything we said. "Sarah seems quite nervous," Lily giggled after catching me staring again. "Oh, I'm sorry," I blurted out, feeling my cheeks burn. "It's just that you're so beautiful." The room filled with laughter, and I felt myself relax slightly. This was going better than I'd hoped. Then Ethan cleared his throat.
"Sarah, we actually have a request."
"What is it?"
"We'd like to have our wedding here at your hotel."
My heart soared. "Really?"
"Yes."
Ethan nodded.
"Many of our guests will be from overseas. This place has beautiful gardens and really showcases American elegance. I think they'd love it. What do you think?"
"That's a great idea." I practically bounced in my seat. "I'll check with the manager right away." "Thank you, Sarah." Lily beamed at me, and I felt warm with pride. A few minutes later, I excused myself to use the restroom, still floating on cloud 9. As I stood at the mirror fixing my lipstick, I heard the door open behind me. "Hey, you." I saw Lily's reflection in the mirror, but something was different. Her voice had lost its musical quality, replaced by something lower, colder. I turned around, confused by the sudden change. "What's your problem staring at me all evening? Something bothering you?" I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable." I started to apologize, but she cut me off with a harsh laugh. "God, you're so stupid it's actually funny." I stood frozen, unable to process this complete transformation. Was this really the same woman who'd been charming my family just moments ago? "I mean, are you two really siblings?" She crossed her arms, looking me up and down with undisguised contempt. "The difference is ridiculous. Ethan's been on the fast track his whole life, and then there's you, a dropout maid. Even your looks. Ethan's handsome enough to be with me, but you're just plain. Below average, actually. This is way worse than I expected. Hilarious!" Each word felt like a physical blow, but I still couldn't quite believe what I was hearing. My brain seemed stuck, unable to reconcile this cruel woman with the charming future sister-in-law from dinner. "That vacant expression," Lily sneered, her perfectly manicured finger pointing at my face. "Your education really shows on your face. You know, when Ethan first mentioned his sister, I pictured someone worthy of being related to him." She took a step closer, the expensive perfume she wore now seeming sickly sweet in the confined space of the bathroom. Her heels clicked against the marble floor, each step deliberate and menacing. "Hey," she whispered, leaning in close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. "Are you sure you're really related to Ethan?" "What?" The word came out as barely more than a breath. "Come on. You look like nothing alike. Your brain's nothing alike." Her red lips curved into a cruel smile. "Wait, I get it. You must be your mom's kid from another man. It's a single-parent household, right? No wonder that pathetic mother of yours. Ethan's real father probably left because of her." The words hit me like a bucket of ice water, shocking me out of my stunned silence. I could take her insults about my education, my job, even my looks. But my mother? The woman who had worked herself to exhaustion to give us a better life? "Look," I said,
my voice shaking with anger. Say what you want about me, but don't you dare insult my mother. I don't care if you're marrying my brother. I won't stand for it. My voice echoed off the bathroom tiles, louder than I'd intended. For a moment, Lily looked startled by my outburst, but she quickly recovered, her face settling into a mask of contempt. She shifted her weight to one leg, crossing her arms as she looked down on me.
A dropout talking back to me? Ugh, this is why I hate dealing with stupid people.
She examined her manicure with exaggerated care.
Having someone like you as my sister-in-law would be a stain on my life. Hey, do me a favor. At the wedding, actually forever, could you pretend we're not related? I can't have people knowing I'm connected to a dropout.
With that, she turned on her heel and strode out, leaving behind only the echo of her clicking heels and the lingering scent of her perfume. I stood there for what felt like hours, gripping the cold marble of the sink, trying to process what had just happened. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and in their harsh glare, I could see my reflection. Plain, ordinary me in my department store dress, trying so hard to fit into Lily's world. When I finally gathered myself enough to return to the dining room, Lily was already there, waving me over as if nothing had happened.
Sarah, finally back.
Her voice was once again warm and musical.
I've been waiting. I have something important to ask. Come.
The transformation was so complete, so perfect, that for a moment I wondered if I had imagined the entire bathroom confrontation. But the sick feeling in my stomach told me otherwise. Once I was seated, Lily made her announcement with all the dramatic flair of a stage actress.
Actually,
she looked around the table, her eyes lingering on each face before settling on mine with a slight smirk.
I'd love for our dear Sarah to give a speech at the wedding.
The words hit me like a physical blow. A speech? In front of all those people? Even Ethan seemed surprised. Sarah? Really?
Oh, Ethan, I'm sorry I didn't tell you.
Lily's hand flew to her chest in a gesture of mock apology.
But when Sarah and I were in the bathroom just now, she was saying how much she wanted to do something special for you.
I sat there, mouth agape, as Lily spun her web of lies. She described a heartwarming bathroom conversation that had never happened, complete with imagined details about how I tearfully expressed my desire to contribute to their special day. Looking up, I saw Lily and Ethan smiling at me expectantly. The trap was perfectly laid. How could I possibly refuse without looking like a terrible sister? Sarah, you don't have to if you don't want to, Ethan said gently, his kind eyes showing nothing but love and support. I swallowed hard, my throat feeling like sandpaper. No, it's okay. I'll do it. For you, brother. Seeing Ethan's face light up with joy, I knew I couldn't refuse. Even if I couldn't figure out Lily's true intentions, even if this was just another way for her to humiliate me, I would do it for my brother. What I didn't know then was that this speech would become the instrument of Lily's ultimate downfall. The months leading up to the wedding passed in a blur of preparations. During the day, I worked my regular shifts at the hotel, but every evening was dedicated to crafting and practicing my speech. I was determined to make Ethan proud, despite Lily's obvious attempts to undermine me at every turn. She would drop by the hotel unexpectedly, always managing to catch me during my busiest moments.
Oh, Sarah!
She'd call out loudly whenever she spotted me carrying linens or pushing a cleaning cart.
How's the speech coming along? I do hope you're putting in enough effort. We'll have some very important guests there.
One particularly memorable afternoon, she cornered me in the service corridor while I was rushing to deliver fresh towels to a suite.
I was just telling my bridesmaids about you,
she said, examining her nails.
They were so touched by your story. The dropout sister trying her best to contribute to the wedding. They think it's just adorable, like a real-life Cinderella. Though,
she paused, her lips curving into a cruel smile.
I suppose that would make me the wicked stepsister, wouldn't it?
I gripped the towels tighter, fighting to keep my voice steady. Was there something you needed, Lily?
Oh, not really. Just making sure you're not forgetting your place.
She reached out and straightened my name badge with her perfectly manicured fingers.
It would be such a shame if you embarrassed Ethan in front of all our guests.
But what Lily didn't know was that I had a secret weapon. My Palace Hotel family. Don't let her get to you, mi amor. Maria would say during our breaks. That woman may have fancy degrees, pero ella knows nothing about the real class. My coworkers rallied around me, turning my speech preparation into a group project. Jin would help me practice pronunciation during quiet afternoon shifts. May offered suggestions on how to properly address the Chinese guest who would be attending. Even our head chef, Alessandro, contributed by teaching me the correct Italian phrases to compliment the international guest. One evening, as I was practicing in an empty conference room, Maria caught me rehearsing. Sarah, she said, leaning against a doorframe, why are you practicing only in English? I looked up from my notes confused. That's what Lily expects. She wants me to show how educated I can sound. Maria's eyes twinkled. Exactamente. That's what she expects. Pero mi niña, you have something she don't even know about. What's that? You have all of us. And between us, how many languages do you speak now? I counted in my head. Thanks to my coworkers and our international guest, I picked up quite a few over the past few years. Well, there's English, obviously, then Mandarin from May, Korean from Jin, Thai from Sung Chai. Exactamente. Maria clapped her hands together. So, why give the speech they expect? Give them the speech they deserve. I felt a slow smile spread across my face as I understood what she was suggesting. But Maria, won't that be showing off? Showing off? She scoffed. No, mi amor. It's showing them all you really are. Remember what I taught you about dignity. I nodded, recalling her words from my first days at the hotel. Dignity, yours and theirs. See, sometimes keeping your dignity means surprising people who think they have you figured out. From that day on, my practice sessions took on a new dimension. I began crafting versions of my speech in multiple languages, working with my coworkers to perfect each one. The simple English speech I'd originally planned transformed into something much more ambitious. But I kept this development to myself. Even as Lily's taunts grew more frequent as the wedding approached, let her think I was struggling with a basic English speech. Let her believe she had me cornered. The night before the wedding, I couldn't sleep. From my small staff room window, I could see the garden where they'd set up the reception area. White chairs gleamed in the moonlight, and fairy lights twinkled in the trees like stars. My phone buzzed, a text from Ethan. Get some sleep, little sister. Tomorrow's going to be amazing. I smiled at his message, then noticed I had another unread text from an unknown number. Opening it, my heart sank. Don't forget, Mandarin tomorrow. Hope you've been studying. Lily. I took a deep breath, thinking of Maria's words about dignity. Then I sent a simple reply. Don't worry, I'm ready. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear, the kind of perfect day that usually only exists in fairy tales. I watched from my window as the final preparations came together. Florists arranging massive bouquets, waiters polishing glasses until they sparkled, and the wedding planner directing traffic like a conductor leading an orchestra. My hand shook as I got dressed for the ceremony. My own outfit, a bridesmaid's dress in pale blue silk, hung on my door. Lily had chosen it herself, making sure to mention how generous she was being by including me in the wedding party, despite my background. A knock at my door made me jump. Sarah? Maria's voice called softly. Can I come in? When I opened the door, she was holding a small wooden box. This is for you, mi amor. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet, simple but elegant. Maria, I can't. It was mi mama's, she said, fastening it around my wrist. Ella wore it the day she became an American citizen. It gave her the courage to speak in front of all these people. She squeezed my hand. Today, it will give you courage también. The ceremony itself passed in a blur of music and flowers. I watched my brother beam with pride as Lily floated down the aisle in her designer gown, looking every bit the perfect bride. If I hadn't known better, I would have believed the tears in her eyes were from pure joy rather than carefully calculated performance. Then came the reception. I was sitting at my assigned table, notably far from the main wedding party, when Lily's voice cut through the gentle dinner chatter. Ladies and gentlemen,
May I have your attention, please?
She stood, resplendent in her white gown, and made her way toward me. The clicking of her heels against the floor seemed to match my racing heartbeat.
We now have a very special speech from the groom's sister, Sarah. You know, Sarah here has quite a story.
Her voice dripped with false sweetness as she pulled me to my feet.
Coming from a single-parent household, she actually dropped out of high school to work as a housekeeper at this very hotel, living on-site to help support her mother. Such a touching story of sacrifice.
I could feel hundreds of eyes on me as she guided me toward the microphone. Some guests looked sympathetic, others uncomfortable, and a few wore the same condescending expression as Lily.
And since we have so many distinguished guests from Asia today,
Lily's grip on my shoulder tightened.
She'll be delivering her speech in Mandarin.
The room fell silent. I could see Ethan at the head table, his expression confused. Mom sat beside him, her hands clasped tightly together.
Oh,
Lily's voice carried mock surprise.
Did I forget to mention that part? Don't worry, this hotel gets so many Asian guests. Surely you must know some basic phrases by now. Or maybe it's too challenging for someone who didn't finish high school?
The whispers started immediately. I could see the international executives shifting uncomfortably in their seats, while others began checking their phones, already bored with what they assumed would be an awkward disaster. What's taking so long? Can she even speak Chinese? Then, from the back of the room, I heard a familiar voice.
Sarah, stand tall, you got this.
Maria's voice was followed by others, my hotel family coming to my support.
Sarah, you can do it. Remember how far you've come.
That's right.
We believe in you.
I felt Maria's bracelet against my wrist and thought of all the hours of practice, all the languages I'd learned, all the dignity I'd earned through hard work rather than privilege. Taking a deep breath, I began speaking in perfect Mandarin. As she said, I'm not particularly smart. The room fell silent as my Mandarin flowed smoothly through the speakers. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see Lily's smug expression faltering. I've made it this far thanks to the love of my mother and brother. I continued in Mandarin, my voice growing stronger. When I heard my brother was getting married, I was overjoyed and couldn't wait to meet the woman he'd chosen. However, at our first meeting, those expectations were thoroughly crushed. A murmur ran through the crowd. Several of the Asian business executives leaned forward, their expressions intent. Perhaps I should share what happened during that first meeting, I said, switching seamlessly to Korean. When Miss Peterson and I were alone, she showed me her true face. More gasps from the audience. I could see Lily's face turning pale as she realized what was happening. Switching back to Mandarin, I recounted exactly what she'd said in the bathroom that day, how she'd insulted me, my education, my job. Then in Korean, I described her cruel words about my mother. The crowd's reaction was immediate. Disapproving murmurs filled the air, and several guests turned to glare at Lily, who stood frozen beside the head table. Nevertheless, I continued, now in Thai, surprising even more of the international guest. She's the woman my brother chose. I sincerely hope they'll be happy together. Switching back to Mandarin, I concluded, Brother, I'll miss you, but please visit sometimes. Mom and I will be waiting. For a moment, absolute silence filled the reception hall. Then, like a wave building strength, applause began to roll through the room. It started with the international guest, the Chinese business executives, the Korean diplomats, the Thai investors, and spread until the entire room was on its feet. Bravo! Incredible! 3 languages! Did you hear her pronunciation? I saw Mom wiping tears from her eyes, while Ethan sat stunned, his face a mixture of pride and confusion. But it was Lily's reaction that drew everyone's attention. With a screech that cut through the applause, she lunged forward, grabbing my collar. How dare you! She snarled, spittle flying from her lips. Her perfect bridal makeup was cracking under her rage. Why did you tell everyone about that day? She shook me, her designer bracelets jangling against each other. Who do you think you are? A nothing, a nobody, a dropout trying to shame me. Lily! Ethan's voice cut through her tirade. He stood up so quickly his chair toppled backward. That's not even the main issue here.
I'd never seen my gentle brother so angry. His hands were shaking as he stepped around the table.
Lily, what's going on? You never mentioned anything about a Mandarin speech. And what Sarah said about that day, did you really say those things? Did you really insult my mother like that?
The room had gone deadly quiet again, all eyes fixed on Lily. She stood there, still gripping my collar, her chest heaving with angry breaths.
Tell me it's not true, Ethan pleaded, his voice cracking. Tell me you didn't say those things about our mother.
Under Ethan's intense stare and the crowd's disapproving murmurs, Lily finally broke. Yes, fine, it's all true, she screamed, releasing my collar to throw her hands in the air. But it's ridiculous! How can someone as accomplished as you, someone worthy of marrying me, have a dropout for a sister? It's embarrassing! Her voice rose to a hysterical pitch as she continued. You're handsome and educated, but your sister, she's plain and stupid! She's an embarrassment! How was I supposed to introduce her to my friends? To my family? Oh, this is my sister-in-law. She makes beds for a living. Exhausted from her outburst, Lily collapsed to her knees, her pristine white dress pooling around her like fallen snow. The booing from the crowd grew louder, and I saw several guests standing up and walking out. What's everyone's problem? She muttered, her mascara running down her cheeks. Damn it! If only she didn't exist! With that last cry, she lunged at me again, her manicured nails reaching for my face. The crowd gasped, but before she could reach me, a sharp crack echoed through the hall. I opened my eyes to see Ethan standing between us, his hand still raised from where he slapped Lily. The silence that followed was deafening.
Lily.
Ethan's shoulders shook as he looked down at her.
Even after hearing Sarah's speech, you still...
His voice broke, and I could see tears in his eyes. My strong, gentle brother, who had never raised a hand in anger before, who had always protected me with kindness rather than force, had finally reached his breaking point.
Listen, Lily, Sarah and I grew up to be who we are because of our mother.
He gestured to where Mom sat, tears streaming down her face.
And you heard Sarah's speech, right? She's hardworking like our mom and smart like me. Can't you see that? She speaks 3 languages fluently, languages she learned while working to support our family. How can you call that stupid?
Lily just sat there, her face red, her head bowed. Her perfect wedding hairdo had come loose, strands falling around her face like a broken crown.
I never thought you'd do something like this,
Ethan continued, his voice growing stronger.
This family, my real, blood-related family, means everything to me. We talked about this so many times. I thought you understood.
He took a deep breath, and I could see him straightening his shoulders, preparing himself for what came next.
The wedding is off.
The words fell like stones in the silent hall. Lily's head snapped up, her eyes wide with disbelief. Ethan! She scrambled to her feet, grabbing at his legs. No, please! Anything but that. I'm sorry. I love your mother and sister, even if they're poor, even if they're not educated. Please, just don't. Her pleas echoed through the hall, making several guests wince. Even in her desperation, she couldn't help but add those subtle digs. Even if they're poor, even if they're not educated, she still didn't understand.
Get up, Lily, Ethan said quietly. You're embarrassing yourself.
Maria stepped forward from where she'd been standing with the other hotel staff. Come, Señora, let me help you to your room. But Lily wasn't finished. As Maria reached for her arm, she jerked away, nearly tripping over her dress. This is all your fault, she screamed, pointing at me. You planned this. You learned those languages just to humiliate me. No, Lily, I said softly. I learned them because that's what this job required. Because every guest deserves to feel welcomed and understood, regardless of where they're from or who they are. That's what having class really means. A quiet murmur of approval ran through the remaining guests. Several of our regular international clients were nodding, and I could see Mr. Kim from Korea giving me a thumbs up from his table. Security, Maria called, and 2 of our uniformed staff appeared instantly. Please escort Mrs. Peterson to her room. As they led her away, her sobs echoing down the corridor, I turned to Ethan. I'm so sorry, brother. I never meant to ruin your wedding. He pulled me into a tight hug. You didn't ruin anything.
You saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life.
In the days that followed, the story of the multilingual hotel housekeeper who exposed a bride's true nature spread through both social and business circles. Lily's carefully crafted image crumbled as quickly as her wedding day makeup had. Despite desperate apologies from both Lily and her parents, Ethan remained firm in his decision.
Someone who could say such things won't change easily,
he told me over coffee a few days later.
And honestly, I'm relieved. I'd rather know now than years down the road.
We were sitting in the hotel staff break room where I'd spent countless hours learning languages with my coworkers. Maria had made us her special hot chocolate, complete with cinnamon and a touch of cayenne pepper. Still, I said, warming my hands around the mug, I feel bad about how public it all was.
Don't,
Ethan replied firmly.
You gave her exactly what she asked for, a speech in Mandarin. Not your fault she didn't expect you to actually deliver.
We were interrupted by a knock at the door. It was Mr. Park, one of the hotel's regular business guests from Korea.
Sarasi, he called out cheerfully. Just the person I want to see.
He wasn't alone. Behind him stood an elegant woman in a crisp business suit, whom I recognized as Mrs. Chen, a frequent guest from Shanghai. We need to talk to you, Mrs. Chen said, her eyes twinkling, about a job opportunity. It turned out that the wedding disaster had an unexpected silver lining. Several of our international clients had been impressed not just by my language skills, but how I handled myself under pressure. Mrs. Chen, who was the regional director for Lily's former company, had a proposition for me. We need someone in our international relations department, she explained. Someone who can communicate effectively across cultures, who understands the importance of dignity and respect. Someone like you. The salary they offered was more than I'd ever dreamed of making. When I hesitated, thinking of my loyalty to the palace, Maria practically pushed me out the door. Mi amor, she said, hands on my hips. Sometimes the student must leave to become the master. Besides, she winked, you can still visit your old tia Maria. The transition from housekeeper to international relations coordinator was surreal. I now had an office in the same building where Lily had worked, though she'd resigned shortly after the wedding debacle. According to the office gossip, she couldn't handle the whispers and sideways glances from colleagues who'd attended the wedding. My first day, as I sat at my desk arranging my family photos, my phone buzzed with a message from Mom.
Your father would be so proud of you, sweetheart. I know I am.
I smiled, touching Maria's bracelet that I still wore every day. Then I opened my computer and began responding to emails in English, Mandarin, Korean, and Thai. I dropped out of high school to help my family. There are still plenty of people like Lily who look down on me because of my education, but I believe there are more important things than academic credentials. What matters is experience. Living through things firsthand broadens your world and enriches your life. I'll never become arrogant about book smarts. Instead, I'll keep experiencing life fully and growing every day. And sometimes, when I'm reviewing international contracts or hosting business dinners with global executives, I think back to that scared teenager practicing room service etiquette in empty hallways. I think of Maria's lessons about dignity, of Mom's sacrifices, of Ethan's unwavering support. I think of Lily, who taught me that true class has nothing to do with degrees or designer clothes. And I smile, knowing that every step of my journey, even the painful ones, led me exactly where I needed to be. These days, when people ask about my education, I hold my head high and tell them my story. Not because I want sympathy or admiration, but because I want them to understand what I learned through experience. Success isn't about where you start. It's about how far you're willing to go to reach your dreams. And sometimes, the longest journeys begin with making a bed in a luxury hotel.